Well, it has been a week. It's been a very long week of extreme anticipation for Ace Frehley to reappear on Eddie Trunk's Trunk Nation show on SiriusXM to supposedly spill some dirt on Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons if Paul didn't apologize for recent comments that he made on the Howard Stern show, where he said that had all four original members perform together at their Rock Hall induction, the band should have been called Piss. Well, a week has now passed. Paul did not apologize, quite the opposite actually, but we'll get to that. And Ace did make good on his word to return to Eddie Trunk's show. So that being said, did Ace expose anything about Paul or Gene? Has there been any updates at all to this story? Let's discuss. As a very quick refresher, Kiss recently appeared on the Howard Stern show to promote what is being advertised as their final shows ever, which we all know is not true. When Howard asked why they did not perform with Ace Frehley and Peter Criss at their 2014 Rock Hall induction, both of whom were present at the ceremony. As I mentioned earlier, Paul said that had that happened, the band should be called Piss, while also noting that the Rock Hall were quote-unquote demanding that all four original members perform together. But of course, as we know, that did not happen. Fast forward from the Stern interview to last week when Ace appeared on Eddie Trunk, demanding an apology from Paul, saying in part, "I'm going to make a statement to Paul Stanley right now. And Paul, if you're not listening, I'm sure one of your associates in the KISS group are. And I'm telling you that I want my formal apology for what you said and a retraction and an apology within 7 days. And if I don't get that within 7 days, I'm coming back on Ed Trunk's show and I'm going to tell some dirt that nobody knows about Paul and Gene that I've always kept to myself because I'm the kind of guy who doesn't talk about this." He goes on to say, "I have a 120-page manuscript that I wrote after I finished my book. My attorney has it in a safety deposit box. God forbid anything happens to me. My attorney is instructed to release it to the New York Times, Rolling Stone, API, everybody. So they can't intimidate me with trying to hurt me or say, 'You'd better not say anything about me live on the radio,' because then they're totally screwed. Their careers will be ruined." So, ever since last week's interview, it's been all over the news. We've talked about it on this channel. Eddie Trunk himself has brought it up on almost every show he's done since the interview last week. It's been fucking everywhere. He also teased prior to Ace's latest time coming on the show this week on Wednesday that both Ace and Paul had been in contact, but he left it at that. All would be revealed, though, in Ace's interview Wednesday on Eddie Trunk's show, when Eddie asked if the two had been in touch, where Ace responded, "Yes, he did, not long after the show was over. I was blindsided by the phone call because I saw his name come up on my cell phone, and I spoke to him 100 different times on that number. And that can be verified by Verizon, who is my cell phone carrier. I figured he was calling me maybe to apologize or at least explain why he said that. Maybe he meant it more towards Peter than me. Instead of an apology, I got a 5-second phone call. 'Fuck you, Ace, I'm not going to apologize,' and hung up. He wasn't even man enough to give me a rebuttal and explain why I'm so upset or anything like that. And if you look for your email messages that I sent you," which he's talking about things that he sent Eddie Trunk, "I did screen grabs from Verizon. It's the same day as our interview, and it says 5 seconds. Did you know that Ace was a Verizon wireless customer? Clearly, he would like you to know. I personally have AT&T, but that's neither here nor there. Anyways, he goes on to say that he's been in touch with Doc McGee, who is Kiss's manager. He's been in contact multiple times since last week, and Doc is supposedly claiming that Paul, in fact, never even called Ace, with Ace adding, "I've been in touch with Doc for at least 3 or 4 times between our last interview and today. And the earliest I texted him was today because I was hoping Paul had enough sense to, you know what, I would have been happy if Paul just called me one-on-one like a man and apologized. That would have sufficed, but after cursing me out on the phone, the gloves are off." The gloves are off, Ace says. Oh shit, it's finally time after a long week of anticipation. After noting that the Howard Stern interview could find Kiss in court for defamation of Ace's character, he finally moves on to what we were all waiting for, the dirt on the band and more info on this alleged 120-page manuscript that he has. While he did make good on his promise to return to Trunk Nation if there was no apology from Paul, he decided not to reveal anything at all, saying, quote, "I spoke to several good friends who are God-fearing people and I go to AA meetings with, and they said, don't ever sink to their level. That's what they do. That's what they've been doing for years. Why are you going to sink to their level?" So then I came to the realization that I don't even have to bring up anything that I have hidden away in my attorney's safe deposit box. I can just talk about things that they've said about me in black and white. They can't come after me after that because they said it. It's in black and white. A couple of things I want to mention. For one, didn't he just say that he could have sued Kiss for what was essentially a joke that they cracked on Howard Stern's show, of all people? And then last week, he threatens to expose all sorts of things about Paul and Gene, more than quote-unquote sinking down to their level, as his Alcoholics Anonymous buddies supposedly said. But wouldn't that have been far worse than what Paul said if Ace actually did that? Also, why does he even have this manifesto? Why take the time to write it? And now Ace is basically promoting the fact that supposedly it's going to be released upon his death. Why then? Why after you die? What's in there that can't be released while you're living? Even though he decided not to expose anything, both last week's tirade and Wednesday's interview paint him in just as bad of a light as Paul and Gene, and arguably far, far worse. Another thing I want to talk about real quick is Eddie Trunk. Well, I feel Eddie is either one of those guys that you love or one of those guys that you hate. I personally am a big fan. I listen to his radio show just about every day. I watched that metal show religiously, but some things I definitely find frustrating. He frequently says how he's never tried to stir the pot or pit people against each other. And just last week on an episode of his show, he said that you would be surprised at the guests that he has turned down over the years, as they supposedly wanted to come on just to shit on someone, most likely a former bandmate or something. But I'm calling bullshit on that stance. Eddie claims that he didn't know Ace was going to get into everything last week, and who knows? It's believable, so let's just assume that that is in fact the truth. Okay, cool. But Ace very, very clearly and explicitly noted his intent to return this week on the show to shit on Paul and Gene, and even though he ended up not doing anything at all, Eddie happily obliged. He also frequently says that he is not interested in, quote, who is sleeping with who, and while Ace didn't reveal anything, had he elected to do so, I think we all know what that would have entailed. Their past is no secret, no bands is, especially from that era. And Ace even said last week on Eddie Trunk's show, quote, "You know how many lawsuits girls have had against Gene?" So we all know where that was going to go. The point is this: it's all about generating a reaction, ratings, social media interactions, and so on. So if a media personality ever says that they're doing it for any reason other than those, it's total bullshit. Jesus Christ, though, there's so much fucking drama, it's making my head spin. Nonetheless, though, let's see if this goes any further, and I'm sure we won't have to wait too long for the next big Kiss story, so we might as well just hold our breath till then. It will not be long. One quick funny thing I also want to mention before we wrap it up. At one point in Wednesday's interview, Ace talks about how the Kiss guys have said that both he and Peter Criss are poor, and so Ace's rebuttal in this interview was something along the lines of, "Yeah, I'm poor. That's why we both live in mansions. I have 4 cars in my driveway, and I have a beautiful fiance because I'm poor." Well, at least he admits why they are together. All right, though, I gotta run because my beautiful fiance, who is most certainly not with me for the money, unlike Ace, wants me to pretend to be her spaceman so that she can take a ride on my comet, so I gotta go. But thanks so much for watching. Feel free to subscribe if you want to see more, and I will see you next time.